Now, when we spot a bat flying through the night or grow weak when we see blood, there's always a certain fantasy creature that pops up in our heads. A vampire. Vampires are everywhere in pop culture, from movies to books to even food. But a majority of people who see a person with pale skin or sharp teeth are quick to call them a vampire, when really, there's more to it. So in that case, what's a vampire? A vampire is an immortal, reanimated corpse. At some point or another, a vampire was once a dead mortal, but brought back to life by the quote-unquote disease that defines them as a vampire. Vampires are widely known for their morbid source of sustenance, blood. In order for a vampire to survive in top health, it must drink the blood of a mortal creature once a day, although they can go up to 2 weeks without feeding. But the longer they wait to feed, the weaker they grow, which tends to make them violent and desperate for blood. Most importantly, though, is what they require in order to get that hot blood they desire. Fangs. No fangs, no blood. Of course, even something as powerful and frightening as a vampire has its weaknesses. A simple way to weaken a vampire, at the least, is to hold up the trusty cross. While it's not a fatal blow, it does cause damage.
Get back! Charlie, not the cross. Charlie, not the cross, Charlie.
Holy water also does the trick, as the blessed liquid is like acid to them. Now, if you want to take them out for good, the most commonly known killer for vampires is sunlight. If a vampire comes into contact with a ray of sunlight, it almost instantly disintegrates into a pile of ash. Another good way to kill a vampire is to stab it in the heart with a wooden stake. There's a belief that the stake can be made of silver and still be effective, but that's not really true.
Is this your silver stake?
Last but not least, if all else fails, grab a machete and chop off the head. With that brain detached from the body, there is no way the bloodsucker will be able to go near your neck. Well, now that we know what we're talking about, let's talk about where the vampires came from. The origin of vampires.
All of the vampire folklore and stories we admire began with the tale of Lilith and Cain. Their story is told in the book of Genesis, which resides in the Holy Bible. It all started when God cast a horrid curse on Cain, which threw Cain into a world of shadows with an eternal craving for blood. When he was in the realm of darkness, he found Lilith, who had been the first wife of Adam, but was cast from the garden and into the same darkness as Cain. There, she offered Cain her blood, which gave him his abilities. For years, Cain roamed around the world of shadows before heading back to the world of mortals. It was there where he created the city of Enoch. It was in Enoch where the next generation of vampires came to be. Cain turned 3 mortals into vampires, who then spread their powers to another generation. The last generation before Cain forbade any further creation of the beasts. But that didn't stop the spread of vampires. In Egyptian folklore, vampires were worshipped as gods and goddesses. There's a belief that Nut's first 5 children were vampires, only disguised as gods. Their names are Osiris, Isis, Horus, Set, and Nephthys. It is believed that Set was the main man for chaos and monsters. Another theory claims that vampires were created by Hades, ruler of the underworld in Greek mythology. Despite this, the vampires in Greek mythology were worshipped, similar to the Egyptian vampires. Whether it was admiration or fear that caused the people to worship them is unknown.
No matter where you go, there will always be some vampire tales to tell around the campfire. While different cultures have different perceptions of vampires, from creation to appearance, the most popular variations are part of Indian, Chinese, and Romanian culture. Romanian vampirism is the main influence on the entire idea of what a vampire is. After all, the Dracula myth originated in Romania. It is in Romania where human mortals learned how to identify and destroy vampires. Since the Dracula story awoke in Romania as well, he has become the role model for vampires in pop culture today. Meanwhile, what is perceived as a vampire in Indian culture is very different. Two important ones include the Bhoot, the malicious ghost of a man who died all too soon, and the Vitala, which are supernatural creatures that resemble a skeleton with wings. What these two have in common is that they both roam lands filled with the dead and crave blood. There is also the Brahma Purusha, which originates from northern Indian folklore. It is said that the Brahma Purusha will drink its victim's blood through a hole in the skull before eating the brain and dancing with the victim's intestines wrapped around its head. Last but not least is the goddess Kali, or more well known as the goddess of death. Her physical form, which depicts human arms as a girdle and bones as a necklace, rightly represents the brutality of Indian vampirism. Then there's the Chinese representation of vampires. The Jiangshi is a reanimated corpse in Chinese legend and folklore. According to these legends, the Jiangshi hides in a dark location or even a coffin during the day. When night rolls around, it emerges from its hiding spot and strangely hops along the land. To live, it kills living creatures and absorbs their life force.
When did vampires come to be? Blood-sucking vampires seem to have existed for as long as we have, as their being has been mentioned time and time again throughout history. The earliest record of a vampire is in the 730s CE. It was in the Betal Pacici, which included 25 fables about vampires and other demonic beings. It was written in Sanskrit by a scholar named Bhav Bhuti. No matter where you search, though, there will always be hints of vampirism somewhere in history, hiding in the shadows, much like the creatures themselves.
Why do they exist? Vampires are the physical manifestation of fear and malevolence. They create the balance between good and evil. Without evil, there is no good. That is why vampires exist, regardless of what they look like or where they came from.
If I was a vampire roaming the night, would you be my prey and put your neck on the line? Live in the shadows and die in the light. If I was a vampire